I kept you on a cliffhanger. That is, we ended the class twice with, okay, let's see how to reconcile the statements of Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Jiva Goswami writes in the Priti Sandarbha that in Vaikuntha there are unlimited spiritual forms which are all Jyotir Angsa Bhuta, forms which are emanated from the effulgence of the form of the Supreme Lord. When a devotee becomes liberated, then the Lord makes that soul one with one of those unlimited forms, which sounds like we'll do sadhana here, and then when we become perfect, we mix with one of the parked cars or coats in the hangar in Vaikuntha, the spiritual forms that are near Jiva, Jiva Goswami says, or inactive or dormant, as if achaitan or unconscious. And then we, our souls, which don't have any Swarup or perfected spiritual form within them, connects with one of those parked cars, and by that union, the Jiva can serve as a parikar or associate. So this understanding or misunderstanding of Srila Jiva Goswami's verse, Srila completely decries the existence of the meaning of sadhana, because like I'm not doing sadhana, I'm doing sadhana bhas, or reflection or semblance, or sadhana parad. But a person who's really doing sadhana, that comes at the stage of raganuga bhakti, or the advanced stage of asakti, or more appropriately and efficiently in the stage of bhav, where I have three stages. Antardasha, where I forget this material body and I'm absorbed in myself as a manjari, and I actually see myself in a spurti or vision in my heart serving, and it's real, it's not unreal. Then when that disappears, I come to half internal, half external consciousness, and then gradually to external consciousness, where I'm still feeling separation from what I saw in my inner state, but I can function. In the middle region, I can't function. I can only roll and weep and say, where is that scene? Everything is gone. I've lost everything. So in the advanced stage of sadhana, I'm experiencing my Siddhadeha in my heart. So how is it possible to have that meaning? So let's continue. Then also we read that Srila Gurudev is explaining that Srila Jiva Goswami is on the spiritual platform in the spiritual world as he speaks. But because he's speaking in the material world, he has to use material language, which is by nature defective. So plus, we're also defective by our own disqualification of being conditioned. And so between all that, it filters into non-understanding unless we have the mercy of the pure devotee who will explain it to us properly and reconcile all apparent, and I do repeat the word apparent, differences between our acaryas. Because as Srila Prabhupada wrote, what is stated millions of years ago and what is written 5,000 years ago by Vyasadeva is the same exact message as given by our contemporary acaryas and all throughout the line. Therefore, it's called an unbroken chain of disciplic succession. If there is an actual difference, then one can't be in the acharya line. If he's actually acharya, there will be no difference. So, let's see, where would we be now? So, Prayujamani, Srila Jiva Goswami quoted a verse from the Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 6th chapter, regarding Narada Muni attaining, or better yet said, manifesting his spiritual body. And the verse is, spoken by Narada, having been awarded a transcendental body befitting an associate of the personality of Godhead, I quit this material body, and thus all acquired fruitive results of work stopped. So now Srila Gurudev is giving a different meaning of prayujamane, or attained, that it doesn't really mean that you didn't have it and then you get it. And we'll give so much evidence from later on, from Srila Jiva Gosvami and Srila Baladev Vijaybhusan in his Govinda Bhasya, or commentary on Vedanta Sutra. So, Prayujamani, at the bottom of page 72. Here, the mercy of Bhagavan, along with the sadhana of the jiva, combine. The example of the cat and the kitten. The cat holds the kitten in his mouth, her mouth, and the kitten just has a nice ride. Whereas the baby monkey has to hold on to the stomach of the mother, and he has to work. So combining those two philosophies, as we see in the pastime of Mother Yasoda and Krishna with the two fingers too short, we come to the combination of the cat and the monkey. So here, by the mercy, so Gurudev writes, in the second chapter of page 72, the Swarup of the Jiva is in a latent situation. So it seems like Srila Jiva Goswami is saying that spiritual body up in Vaikuntha that is near Jiva, inactive or dormant, that's the meaning here. What he means is the Swarup of the Jiva, which is our perfectional stage, which is always in Vaikuntha, but it's also in our heart. It's in our heart in a latent situation as a seed. And we've discussed that many times from this book. So the Swarup of the Jiva in the heart is in a latent position, in a seed. Because when Krishna creates the Jivas, he creates them with the whole thing, the seed of their relationship, but in seed form. So that's the meaning of Jiva Goswami there. So the Swarup of the Jiva is in latent situation. And it is spiritual because it is of the spiritual world, either of Vaikuntha or of Goloka. But it's covered in this world. So the full thing can't be covered. The seed can be covered. The real thing that's in our perfectional constitutional position in eternal time, that's covered, but it's not covered. Our vision is covered. Like nobody can cover the sun. The cloud does not cover the sun. The sun's way, way above the clouds. But our vision is covered by the cloud. So when they both combine, that is the sadhana of the jiva and the mercy of Bhagavan, then the associate form or parikar swarup, in other words, the siddha swarup or siddha deha, is manifested, but you can say awarded and realized, not before. Understand? Our nitya siddha body is thus realized and illuminated, and thereafter understood at that time in Bhava Bhakti, not before, and fully understood with full realization in Prema Bhakti. So, as Gurudev says the same thing, this occurs at the stage of Bhav, and this is what is known as Prayujamane, that attainment. Nitya siddha sabhavasya prakatyam ridi sajita. The siddha deha is here in this world, but it's of Goloka Vrindavan. Therefore, we can't understand this with our material intelligence, but we have to use our material intelligence to begin with. Therefore, don't just call it a mood or above. Understand fully that by Bhagavan's mercy, a Nitya Siddha Swarup that is completely transcendental and of Goloka Vrindavan will manifest. There's no question of joining a jiva with a spiritual body that's waiting in Vaikuntha. It's just a poetic way that Jiva Goswami is talking. It's poetic. It's, what do you call it? Sakachandra Nyai, or the example of the moon on the branch. The moon is millions of times further even than the sun from us. But still the mother says to the child, look, the moon is there on the branch. Just first you give an easy example, and then later on the more complicated one comes. So, Gurudev continues, top of page 73, there's only one spiritual body. So what would it join? Prayujamane means that when the Kripa, mercy, and the sadhana mix, then realization and illumination occur. They are bestowed upon the jiva. Try to understand one thing. The jiva has one siddhadeha, one perfected form. Since when? Right from the moment the jiva was quote unquote created. From that quote unquote time onward, this has nothing to do with material time. It's eternal time. Nitya Kal. Nitya Vartaman Kal. This is spoken about by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jiva Dharma. So there's a perfected Swarup, body. Now, Swarup, the word Swarup, can refer to the ontological position of the jiva, which means what we were before we conditioned, what we are now beyond the body. We are beyond matter, we're eternal, we have no material happiness or distress, we're self-illuminated, so many qualities. And we have one Swarup. So that Swarup, the ontological position of the jiva, is actually the siddhadeha, but it's in seed form, it's dormant. In its dormancy, it's the ontological situation of the jiva, but ultimately, Swarup means the spiritual form. And I'm going to show you that from Srila Jiva Goswami's writings themselves. So right from the moment the jiva was created, from that time onward, this has nothing to do with material time. There is one perfected Swarup body of the jiva in which he performs service to the Lord, or in which he can serve Bhagavan in the future. This perfected form and the jiva are not separate. There is a difference between the jiva and his spiritual and his material body, but not between the jiva and his constitutional form. It's not just that our acaryas use the word in Sanskrit or Bengali, Swarup, and we translate it into constitutional form, but really it means ontological. No, because our English-speaking acaryas use the word constitutional form, perfected constitutional form. If I'm not clear about anything, you can welcome to interrupt me. Because I've said this a million times to myself, so I don't need to hear it again. So I'm saying it for you. So please interrupt me if you need to. So when will we realize this? By the mercy of Bhagavan and Guru, and by performing continuous sadhana bhajan, that nitya siddha, or eternally perfected body, and bhav will manifest and come into our realization. How? By descending from the heart of the nitya siddha associate of Krishna. So now going into Narada more.
Syamarani Didi, what is the difference between constitutional and ontological?
Constitutional form or constitutional position is when the ontological situation, that is where we are without realization, where 8,400,000 species are in their soul, not in their body. It's the nature of the soul proper in all conditions, and before we were conditioned, while we're conditioned. And that's the dormancy of our constitutional form or position. Understand? When that bhav descends, when that mercy descends, by the combination of the kripa and the sadhan, then we realize that constitutional form, which is already there in eternal time.
Yeah.
As Krishna says in the Gita, I know everything that's happened in the past, everything that's happening now, and everything that's yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me, no one knows. So it's already there on another time frame called Nitya Vartaman Kal, or eternal time. So that's the reality. And here the seed of that reality is existing in our heart. Is that clear now?
Yes, when you say it sounds clear. Then I go back to my conditioned
linear time
brain.
Linear time. We've been, every species of life, and then we meet a guru. We get Shraddha, which is the smallest fraction of that Swarup's of Prem, or our Nitya Swarup. That's the smallest fraction. Gurudev said it 1,000,000 times. So then, by the Harikatha of Sri Guru, gradually we come to Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Anartha Nivritti, and so on. And then when Bhav comes, the full splash of Swarup Siddhi descends into our heart from the heart of the eternal associate of the Lord. And that's when we realize our constitutional form. And that's why Jiva Gosvami spoke poetically that it's waiting in Vaikuntha and it's dormant. Really, everybody's saying the same thing. If you look in Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj's quotes in chapter 2 of this book, because all of the acaryas, the associates of the, God brothers of our Srila Prabhupada, they're quoted on a few pages each. And you can see how poetic he is. So in different ways, it's trying to come into the material world with material language. Like Prabhupada writes or says in a lecture, we have a spiritual body now, but now the material body is like a coating, like a clay coating. That's obviously poetic, because we don't have a spiritual body that's the same shape as the material body, and it's just a coating. Right. They're just all Sakachandra Nyai. Okay, so I'm continuing. Okay, Kamala?
Yes, thank you so much.
What's a rasagula? You haven't had a rasagula. So I'm telling you, it's the size of a ping pong ball, it's spongy, it explodes in the mouth and melts down and drips down the two sides of the mouth. And it tastes like a combination of honey and an apple. Does that help? No. So as long as we're in linear time consciousness, material consciousness, thinking I'm a lady or a lad, that's Prabhupada Gurudev's words, we won't fully understand, but at least we can start with our material intelligence. Is that okay?
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going on to what the meaning of this verse about Narada Muni is. Prayujamane mai tam shuddham bhagavatim tanum. After Naraji performed sadhana and bhajan for a long time, he received a momentary darshan of Bhagavan. After that, the Lord vanished, at which time Narada began suffering in intense separation. That is the price, intense separation. This suffering may be compared with a fish out of water, chatpat chatpat. The Lord then told Narada in an aerial voice, there are still some impurities in you. God, if he has impurities, what to speak of me? Until those impurities, called kasayas, are eradicated, my darshan will not be possible. To increase your desire, I have given you a very special darshan. From now on, you will get darshan. You will not get darshan until those impurities are completely eradicated. Not in Swarup Siddhi, because Narada was in Bhava Bhakti or Swarup Siddhi stage. But in Vastu Siddhi only means when you get your spiritual body and your material body disappears. At that time, you'll be able to have my darshan and serve me constantly. So then after the Lord disappeared, Narada engaged in his sadhan bhajan, being detached from all material desire. He followed the principles delineated in the following verse, which is, an intelligent person who has controlled his mind and conquered fear should give up all attachment to material objects such as wife, family, and nation, and should wander freely without embarrassment, hearing and chanting the holy names of the Lord, the bearer of the chariot wheel. The holy names of Krishna are all auspicious because they describe his transcendental birth and activities, which he performs within this world for the salvation of the conditioned souls. Thus, the holy names of the Lord are sung throughout the world. So Narada followed that. He roamed everywhere. He collected millions of disciples all over the universe. Then, in the course of time, when his prarabdha karma, which is the results of his previous activities, which are being tasted in this body, this very, very body, is made of prarabdha karma. So that was removed by the mercy of the Lord, and there, his material body of 5 elements was also removed. So the body is made of fruit of the results of fruitive activities. You could say that it's made of pus, blood, stool, and urine. You can say that it's made of mucus, bile, and air. You can say that it's made of earth, water, and fire. And you could also say that it's made of prarabdha karma, or the matured results of fruitive activities. So that was removed by the mercy of the Lord. So it is said in the Bhagavatam, that same Bhagavatam verse about Narada, Nyapatat Panchabhotika, meaning that Narada quit his gross material body of 5 elements. So now in the next part, second half of page 74, called What Really Happened, Gurudev is explaining, what do we see now? Narada is traveling throughout the universe in a similar kind of body, in a body that looks like the one he had before, in his stage as a sadhaka. What then really dropped? Did he quit his material body as we do? What really happened? So Srila Viswanath Chakrabarti Thakur explains in Madhurya Kadamini that the first mood of sadhana bhakti is Krishna Seva Vasana, which means the desire to serve Krishna. That is what Guru gives. He doesn't give that same seed that Krishna gives at the time of our so-called creation, which is the seed of our relationship. He gives this, his seed is called Krishna Seva Vasana, or the turning from Maya, the beginning of the turn from Maya towards Krishna. And whatever our relationship is, that's already there. The Guru cannot change the relationship. He can only develop it or manifest it, help us manifest it. So what is Krishna Seva Vasana? It's the minutest part of Swarup Shakti. From there, systematically, beginning from Shraddha, the Jiva comes to the stages of Sadhu Sangha, as we discussed, Anartha Nivritti, Nistha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhav, Swarup Siddhi, and then finally Vastu Siddhi, which is our real Siddhadeha, or constitutional form, where our braids, our dress, our services, how we smile, all of that, our individuality, is all manifest. So to the extent that bhakti manifests in the form of Shraddha, Nistha, Ruchi, etc., to that extent, one's Panchabhotika Bhav disappears and one's Chinmaya Swarup manifests. So people who are advancing, not myself, but those who actually are advancing through the latter stages, they are already developing systematically the Siddha Swarup. But until he's attained Vastu Siddhi, it doesn't fully manifest. At this stage of Swarup Siddhi, he was singing everywhere and waiting for that time to come. So that body which he had then as a sadhaka is seen after his attaining perfection. even today, if we were to see him. So his Panchabautika body was removed, means that his Panchabautika bhav, that was previously in his heart, was removed, and thus his spiritual body manifested. So when I leave my material body, it's not going to be my Panchabautik bhav being finished. That's way there for so many. I can't even count how many births I have to expect. But with Narada, because he was on his way to his Vastu city, that was the case with him.
Doesn't mean that the last birthday you have, you keep it in it.
Then Gurudev talks about from Srila Viswanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, when the gopis, you must have heard many times, give up their body because they were feeling so much separation from Krishna when he was playing his flute, and those who were not qualified yet to go because they didn't have, in the rasa dance, because they didn't have sufficient association with the Nityasiddha gopis, their material bodies burnt up in the fire of separation. And then they were able to go the next night or the next or the next. Just like on a tree, there are many fruits. And one fruit falls one day, more fruits mature and fall the next day, and some more the next day, like that. So Srila Gurudev gave this lecture, in this lecture where he's talking about that there's no difference between Jiva Gosvami and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he talks about Srila Viswanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary to that verse that Gurudev quotes about how the gopis left their body. So, because we already have Viswanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary in Gurudev's Ras Panchajai, the editors chose to put that in rather than doing the painstaking translation of that from Gurudev's lecture. Now, the painstaking translation was done up to this point, but now, since we already have the English of Srila Viswanath Chakrabarti Thakur's Sanskrit, which turned into Gurudev's Hindi, which then turned into the English. So I'm going to read that. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes, we said.
Okay. In the face, this is a Sarartha Darshani Bhavanuvad. That means Gurudev's mood merging with the mood and translation of Srila Viswanath Chakrabarti Thakur. Yeah. In the face of the happiness that the gopis enjoy, this is an amazing, amazing commentary. Because we generally hear, for the general reader, that the gopis still had some kasayas, some auspicious things and some inauspicious things, which kept the attachment of which kept them to not be qualified to join the rasa dance. So that was for general people. But Srila Viswanath Chakrabarti Thakur is giving the deeper meaning. It's so wonderful. In the face of the happiness that the gopis enjoyed from Krishna's embrace in their meditation, all the material happiness contained in millions and millions of universes, and the spiritual joy experienced by thousands who have realized thousands of realizations of Brahma, that's puny by comparison. Sinful and pious reactions, prarabdha karmas, are only wiped out by suffering and enjoying them. So the gopis' agony in separation and their happiness in union with Bhagavan can be seen as the reactions of their previous sin and piety, but the Vaishnavas don't accept this view. The misery felt in separation from Bhagavan is not the reaction of sin, and the bliss enjoyed in meeting with him is not the fruit of piety. But for the sadhak in the stage of anartha nivritti, his prarabdha karmas are destroyed just by his worship of Krishna. So in this way, the gopis' auspiciousness and inauspiciousness materially wasn't really there. It's just that they needed more, what's the word? Eagerness.
Yeah.
And so the burning up in separation, burnt up, well, anyway, I'll read it. Due to Subha, the intense, intolerable fire, which arose from separation from their loved one. This fire removed the gopis' inauspiciousness, that is, the material aspects of their bodies, was purified in a special way, and in their meditation, they attained Achyuta's embrace. Thus, their auspiciousness, Mangala, increased, meaning their bodies became fully spiritual. Some of those gopis, now we're going back to his original lecture, the translation of that. Some of those gopis were able to participate in the Rasa of Krishna that very night. Those who still had some impurities, kasayas, may be compared to unripe mangoes. Among the hundreds of mangoes on the same tree, not all of them will ripen on the same day. Some today, some tomorrow, some the day after. Similarly, among those gopis from the group who felt intense separation, some of them, by the association of the Nityasiddha gopis, went to join the rasa dance. Some of them, though not completely ready, were embraced by Krishna in their meditation. They became qualified and joined the rasa later on, next night or the night after. Then the rest of the gopis slowly joined. So none of these gopis died. They didn't really, it wasn't that their bodies burnt up. If they had died, it would have been most inauspicious. They did not give up. They did not have a gunamayi body, material body to leave behind. Rather, their gunamayi bhav was removed. The same is true for Narada. The panchabhotika bhav that was previously present in his heart was completely destroyed. How? By realization and with the feeling of deep separation. Bit by bit, all auspiciousness came, and his kasaya, his desire to perform tapasya in a lonely place and to attain Bhagavan in this condition, vanished. His desire to worship Bhagavan in the mode of goodness forest, at the expense of sadhasanga, went away. Only then was he awarded his true Swarup. So the gopis who were just coming and just beginning their Vastu city, they were compared with the situation of Narada. So Narada received Bhagavan's mercy.
Syamarani, did he?
Yes.
Does that mean that they were both Vastu Siddhi, like Narada and the gopis?
Narada was in Swarup city, very, very advanced stage of bhav, just before you leave the body and then take birth in any of the universes where Krishna is performing his pastimes in the universe. And the gopis, because they had already taken birth where Krishna was in the universe, they were beginning their Vastu city. But still, it was just the beginning. So they had to increase their egoism. They had just a teeny drop of gunamayi bhav to get rid of, which was burnt up in the fire of their separation.
Okay. So, in the case of Narad, he's being described as having given up in the same way as the gopis gave up their gunamayi bhav. It's not clear when he actually received Vastu Siddhi. It seems that
he received Vastu Siddhi when he was ready to, when he was just about to enter Vastu Siddhi, but this material body cannot contain prem. It would explode. Uh-huh. So the ecstasies of prem. So just at that point, when he was qualified, then he got his Vastu Siddhi body. And then immediately became an associate. So there's some difference, because it seems like he just went to Vaikuntha after that and got an eternal body of an associate. And the gopis are in their body as an associate, but there's still something that they had to increase their eagerness.
Is this because it seems that his body hadn't changed at all, even his form kind of thing hadn't
Exactly.
changed.
And similarly, the gopis, when their Gunamayi body, Bhav, was removed, they had the same body. They didn't die, they didn't lose their body.
Uh-huh.
No, I can't understand it either, Sita. I can only imagine that I understand.
it's I got it in my mind. It's just as I was thinking. No, because I understand the example of the gopi. It's just I get a bit stuck with Narad, but could it be because like he is an eternal associate after all? Wasn't that some kind of past? Because didn't he get cursed or something?
He never was conditioned.
Uh-huh.
He's an eternal associate. He's Madhu Mangal.
Yes.
Madhu Mangal manifested as Narada in so many dhams, with Ram, with Narayan, and Madhu Mangal manifested as Srivas Pandit.
Yeah.
So he's a Nitya Parikar, but for us to show us how a conditioned soul advances, he took the role of a son of a maidservant.
Yeah.
After he was cursed by Prajapati,
Mm-hmm.
after he was cursed by Brahma. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question? I don't want to derail you from
I just want to let you know, a disclaimer right from the beginning, I really don't know anything.
No, in my case, like, you know, from where I am, because in both cases they experienced, of course, they're like at the end of, theoretically, they're at the end, you know, from Swarup Siddhi to Vasta Siddhi, and giving up any kind of kasai and being, you know, becoming completely able to serve Krishna in every way. But like and it seems that in both cases they had the intense fire of separation that made that process kind of like, you know, you understand what I'm saying. In the case of the very initial sadhaka, is there a necessity for such kind of fire? I don't know if, you know, that fire that will, you know.
There's a necessity, but an impossibility.
Uh-huh.
We cannot have the fire of separation because we don't feel separation.
Yes, yeah.
As the separation grows and grows, it becomes a fire. Like you see in Valap Kusmanjali, Raghunath Das Goswami prays to Radharani that I'm just about to be burnt up in the forest fire of separation from you. And if you don't give me your glance now, that's the end of me.
Yes. In the case of someone in a baby stage like myself, how can I advance without any kind of greed or anything like this? Or how can that come? Is there a process at this stage that can kind of like, you know?
I'm surprised that you're asking this question, Sita, because you do the answer every day, twice a day, which is bhajans, japa,
Yes. Okay.
honoring prasadam, but with the right mood.
Yes.
That this prasadam is Krishna.
Yeah. The right mood.
Back to the process.
Okay.
Especially the bhajans, they put us in the proper mood for chanting. Because the bhajans are in the right mood of greed.
Yeah.
So we don't have that, but we're repeating the acaryas' words, and then gradually impressions from that comes into our hearts like the rope on the rock.
Yes.
It keeps going back and forth, and finally it makes an impression.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I'm the chat baby wanting to grab the moon that is by the tree, on the branch of the tree. He thinks. Okay. Sorry. Yes. Thank you.
All right, so where are we? So I have explained the truth, but you will not understand it or have any realization of it without deeply studying and without sadhana bhajan. And studying, we learned how to read the book. Oh, Prabhu, you're not a book, all that.
Yeah.
Especially this understanding and realization comes from Guru Kripa. That's why so many of the bhajans, prayers, are to Guru. Some persons think that bhakti can be performed with the mind, but realization does not occur in that way. We read Shastra and memorize it and speak it to others, but we ourselves have no realization. Realization is the fruit of surrender to Guru and the performance of sadhana bhajan. Also, know that no material language can truly explain spiritual subject matters. Only sadhana bhajan, through sadhana bhajan, can we understand.
Yeah.
So, now I'm going to turn to chapter 3 of this book, to the page that talks about Srila Jiva Goswami's quotes about the Swarupa of the Jiva. This will show that he himself, in these following quotes, will explain that the verse, not a verse, it's prose, about the coats on the hanger. Okay, here we go. Going to page 46. So this is quoting from, I believe, the Padma Purana, quoting from Jamatri Muni. Okay. Na jado na vikari cha jnana matra mako nascha svasmai svayam prakasha syat eka rupa swarupa bhak chaitano vyapisilascha chirananda makastata. The soul is not, now this is ontological. The soul is not made of matter, nor is he subject to the changes that matter imposes. His nature does not only consist of knowledge. He's not merely consciousness, but he is conscious. He's pervading within the material body. He's self-illuminating. He illuminates other objects. He has one form, but that form is in seed now, which remains continually situated in its spiritual nature, and which is conscious and blissful. So, the next section is from his Paramatma Sandarbha, where he's explaining his verse, explaining the Bhagavatam verse. Top of page 46. By his own power, the individual spirit soul cannot become free from his entanglement in the material world. However, when a soul inquires about the Supreme Lord, by the influence of the Lord's mercy, he is freed from material bondage. Again, same thing, mercy and sadhana. This is described in 12th canto. In the example given here, with the words Gano Yardaka, that's a Bhagavatam verse. Gano Yardaka Prabhavo, Vidir Yate. It is seen that the eyes themselves are powerless to dispel the clouds, aren't they? Only the sun has that power. In the second part of the example, the word Atmana means of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jigyasa means when the desire to know is aroused. When then the Supreme Lord gives his mercy, and ahankaro nyasati means then the false ego flees. So this means that the false ego perishes when one understands the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here the words cha upadi mean that the ego of the true self is indeed different as described in the comparison. This example explains that when the darkness of the clouds is removed, then the eyes can see the original form of the sun as well as his own nature, his own form. That is to say, the soul comes to realize the Swarup of the Supreme Lord, which naturally reveals his own Swarup. In this way, the soul's original power is openly manifested. Do you see how he's exactly the same as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Yes, good. Okay, now we go to the next section, which is called An Intimate and Inseparable Eternal Relationship. Srila Jiva Goswami's comment, his tika on Brahma Samhita. The living entities are eternal, and they have an eternal relationship with Bhagavan that extends throughout time. See, this is Nitya Vartaman Kal, that extends throughout time, with neither beginning nor end. By constitution, they are intrinsically his superior potency. So Jiva Goswami's tika is, the constitutional position of the living entities is being described in this half slok, beginning with the words Sa Nitya. The word Nitya, eternal, indicates that the living entity exists throughout beginningless and endless time. The living entity has an intimate and inseparable eternal relationship with Bhagavan called Samavaya Sambandha. The living entities have an eternal relationship with Bhagavan, just as the rays of the sun are eternally related to the sun. The eternal intrinsic nature of the living entity is also established by the Svetasvarta Upanishad. That is, there, the individual Jivatma and Paramatma have been compared to two birds sitting on a branch of the same people tree. Next, this is from his Paramatma Sandarbha. When that blissful spiritual consciousness, Anandatmake, is pervertedly reflected in material consciousness, the individual soul thinks, I will not act for your benefit, I will only act for my benefit. So that Anandatmike, blissful spiritual consciousness, is there ontologically as a seed, and that can be pervertedly reflected in material consciousness. But when it reaches its constitutional, or realizes the constitutional form of the jiva, it can no longer be pervertedly reflected. The seed of it is here, and that seed is covered. Or the real thing, you could say, is pervertedly reflected in material consciousness, but not covered. So next quote is covered by materialistic false ego. Here, in the previous verse, the word parabhimanyanena means by entering the material world and thinking I am made of matter. In this way, the transcendental living entity accepts the influence of material nature, energy as his field of activities, and thus actuated, he wrongly applies the activities to himself. In other words, he's not doing anything material. Only when a person is covered by materialistic false ego does he think in this way. At the same time, without an original sense of I, the soul cannot identify with the false sense of I. There has to be a real body. A soul who is convinced of his pure spiritual identity has no reason to enter the material world. In other words, when we realize our Siddha Swarup or constitutional form, then we have no reason anymore. Now we're going to jump a little bit because of the time element. We're going to constitutional form. So this, the next couple of verses by Jiva Goswami shows that he's using the word Swarup in terms of the form, the perfected form. The same explanation is given.
What page is that?
In these words of Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto.
What page
Muktir,
is that?
page top of 51. Muktir hidvan yatarupam swarupena vyavastiti. Liberation is being permanently situated in one's pure form and nature after one gives up the changeable, gross, and subtle material bodies. In this verse, the primary meaning of the word Swarup is the form of the Lord. However, because the individual spirit souls are fragmental parts of the Lord, in the same way rays of sunlight are fragmental parts of the sun planet, the word Swarup may also refer to the individual soul. In the Bhagavatam, Lord Garbhodakshai Vishnu tells the demigod Brahma, when you are free from the conception of gross and subtle bodies, and when your senses are free from all influences of the modes of nature, you will realize your pure form. The word there is Swarupena, in my association. At that time, you will be situated in pure consciousness. I'm also going to read from Baladev Vijayabhushan Prabhu. Let's turn to page 41. Because the criticizers of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who criticize that he's different from Srila Jiva Gosvami, they also say he's different from Baladev Vijayabhushan Prabhu. So here's the thing. Let's go to Baladev Vijayabhushan Prabhu at the bottom of page 41. First section. This is from his Govinda Bhasya commentary on Vedanta Sutra. Other than the statement that the soul is a seer. See, this is the sutra. It's just like two words. Pratag Upadeshat. That's two words. And it means, other than the statement that the soul, Atma, is a seer, knowledge in the Jiva is eternal because of the teachings of scriptures. Did I tell you anything? No. But then his purport is, knowledge as a quality of the Jiva is eternal. Why? Because other than the statement, Pratag, that the Jiva is the seer, there are teachings in the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad that the Jiva has eternal knowledge. The Jiva is indestructible and has indestructible qualities. Knowledge does not arise in the Jiva by contact with the mind, because contact cannot take place between two items having no parts. This knowledge becomes covered by turning away from the Lord, and it manifests by turning towards the Lord, at which time aversion towards him is destroyed.
Syamarani Didi.
Yeah.
What does knowledge mean in that case?
I'm trying to reread that actually. Knowledge does not arise in the Jiva by contact with the mind, because contact cannot take place between two items having no parts. I think I don't understand that. The knowledge is eternally there, ontologically, in seed, and then it becomes fully manifest when we realize our Swarup or spiritual form. Because it says in the previous quality, knowledge as a quality of the Jiva is eternal. Why? Because, all right, so it's eternal. So it doesn't arise in us by contact with the mind. And I don't understand the next, because we already have it eternally. But in seed, it becomes covered by turning away from the Lord, and is manifest fully by turning towards the Lord. Now here, this might make it more clear. Baladev Vijayabhushan Prabhu is explaining it more. Smriti says, just as by washing away dirt, splendor is not created in a jewel, so by destroying faults of materialism, knowledge is not created in the Jiva. Water is not created by digging a well. Rather, an existing thing becomes manifest. How can something non-existing appear? So it's not created, right? If you dig a well, the water is not created. Similarly, by destruction of bad qualities, the obscured qualities, which belongs to the Atma eternally, become manifest, not created. Again, it comes to the same thing about Narada,
Yeah.
about the gopis,
Yeah.
about the ontological seed in comparison to the actual constitutional form,
Is it what
which
you
is fully manifest in eternal time. Yes?
that what you were saying before, that as the sadhaka is advancing in a higher stages of bhakti, then at the same time Swarup seed is manifesting. Didn't you say that before?
Yeah, gradually. But we don't really experience it
Yeah.
until the end of asakti or beginning of bhav, and particularly as bhav develops into Swarup Siddhi.
So is that what he
Swarup
maybe,
Siddha Bhakti.
is that what is meant by the obscure qualities? Would it be this our identification with I and mine kind of thing?
Obscured qualities.
Just before the
No,
last...
obscured qualities, it means that the spirit...
Oh yeah, sorry, the
the
bad
soul's
qualities.
qualities.
Yeah. So he's talking about bad qualities, obscure qualities of which belong to the Atma eternity. So is he talking about those, conditioning?
All the good qualities of the soul.
Eternal qualities.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
It is not a fault that, and when we get fully realized, it's also the qualities of the manjari. So it is not a fault that the jiva, this is the sutra, is both knower and knowledge itself, since these exist in the jiva eternally. This is seen in the case of the sun also, which is both light and illumination. So now the purport: it is not a fault that the jiva who is knowledge itself is also designated as the knower. Why? It is not contrary, because it is seen that the condition of being both the knower and knowledge coexists with the Atma as long as he exists. It is acknowledged that the Atma exists without being, beginning, or end of time. So again, it's ontological and it's also constitutional. I'm going to go on to the next. See, again, on the top of the page, it's talking about the ontological nature of the soul eternally, even right now when we're covered by our conditioning. And it says in the second verse that the soul has a sense of individual identity. That is the seed. Ontologically, it's the seed of our identity as a manjari. The soul is different from other jivas. That means each individual jiva has an individual relationship. And that's a seed ontologically, and then it becomes a manjari later. And when we realize our constitutional form. Now this next one is very, very important. So attains means manifest, which confirms the whole chapter 5 that we just read about Jiva Goswami and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Vishaya means, what is the thesis? In the Chandogya Upanishad, the demigod Brahma explains, by the Supreme Lord's mercy, the enlightened soul leaves his material body and enters the effulgent spiritual world. There he attains his own spiritual body, and he becomes the most exalted of persons. So it sounds like that this verse agrees with the misunderstanding of Jiva Goswami, right?
Then
There he attains his own spiritual body.
which page are you
In
showing?
I'm at the bottom of page 43.
Oh, okay.
I'll repeat. Lord Brahma explains in the Chandogya Upanishad,
Oh, yeah.
by the Supreme Lord's mercy, the enlightened soul leaves his material body and enters the effulgent spiritual world. There he attains his own spiritual body.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like the same misunderstanding. So let's see what the doubt, here's the doubt and then the conclusion. Does the liberated soul attain a body like the bodies of the demigods that is different from himself, or does he manifest his original identity, which is not different from himself? Next page, Purvapaksha means the opponent speaks. The opponent says, he attains a body different from himself. This must be so because the word abhinisadana spudgite, is attained, is employed here. Any other interpretation would make the word meaningless and would also make meaningless the scripture's statement that liberation is a benefit attained by the soul. If this form is only the original nature of the soul and it had existed all along, that's what these people are saying. They say, when they say that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is different, then attaining it would not be a benefit if it's already there. Attaining it would not be a benefit granted to the soul. Therefore, this form is newly attained by the soul and is different from the soul's original nature. So now the Siddhanta is coming up. Srila Baladev Vijayabhusam Prabhu's
Conclusion.
Siddhanta, which also includes the next sutra of Vedanta Sutra. In the following words, the author of the sutras, that is Vyasadeva, gives his conclusion. The jiva manifests his Swarup on attaining the Lord, since the word his own, svena, is used. So, Baladev's commentary. And I'll end with this commentary. The individual soul who, by means of devotional service accompanied by knowledge and renunciation, attains the effulgence supreme, becomes free from the bondage of karma, and attains a body endowed with 8 virtues. This body is said to be the soul's original form. Why is that? The sutra explains. Svena Shabda, because of the word Svena, which means one's own. The word Svena here means in his own original form. For this reason, it cannot be said that this passage means the soul arrives there and then accepts that form, which is an external imposition. In this way, it is proved that the form here is the original form of the soul. This is not contradicted by the use of the word nispajite, for that word is also used to mean is manifested. An example of that usage is seen in the following words of the Shruti Shastra. He is manifested. Also, it is not that the manifestation of the soul's individual original form cannot be a goal of human endeavor just because it already exists. This is so because even though the soul's original form exists, it's not openly manifest. Got that? That goes back to the ontological versus the constitutional. Follow? Yes?
Yeah.
Good.
Yes.
Therefore, it is not useless to say that the soul may endeavor to openly manifest the original form of the soul. Therefore, the manifestation of that soul can be an object of human endeavor. Here, someone may say, when the spirit soul is manifested in its original form and it attains the effulgence supreme, as described in the words Param Jyotir, Upashampadye, the liberated soul thus liberated state thus attained is characterized mainly by a cessation of all material sufferings. If this is said, then I reply, no, it is not so. So what is said? If someone says, the spirit soul is manifested in its original form, and it attains the effulgence supreme, as described in the words Param Jyotir Upasampadya, the liberated state thus attained is characterized mainly by the cessation of material sufferings. In other words, as soon as our material sufferings, then we attain our original form, and we attain Krishna. So then, Baladev Vijayabhusam Prabhu says, if this is said, then I reply, no, it is not so. The Shruti Shastra explains that in the liberated state, the soul is filled with intense spiritual bliss. In other words, it's not just the eradication of suffering, there's positive spiritual bliss there. Mm-hmm. This is described in the Taittiriya Upanishad, because if it's just getting rid of the suffering, then ontologically, although we have the seed of bliss, it's not developed. So it has to be the intense bliss of realizing our constitutional form and having Swarup Shakti descend. Now, these are a lot of words. So I'll ask you to do some homework and read chapter number, I believe it's 12. Let me check. Chapter 12 is called Swarup Shakti. It's all about Swarup Shakti, nothing else. So I suggest for homework, if you read that, that will help us all to understand the expanse of Swarup Shakti.
Okay, yeah, we did say.
We'll also touch on it next time. So,
Syamarani, did I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'm wondering then, the souls in the Brahmajyoti, because they've had the material suffering taken away, and they are experiencing some spiritual bliss, but then are they still in seed form because they haven't realized their relationship with Krishna yet?
Yeah, they haven't developed yet.
Okay. So that's what we would be now if you just took away everything material.
No, you have to desire to merge into God and become God. It's not just that let's take away my suffering.
Right.
Yeah, that desire to merge has to be there. That
Okay.
misconception has to be there in our
Okay.
material conditioning.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm quite ignorant on all these matters. All right, so now we go. He's continuing. This is described in the Taittiriya Upanishad. When one understands the personality of Godhead, the reservoir of pleasure, Krishna, he actually becomes transcendentally blissful. So here someone may object. How do you know that approaching the effulgent Supreme Lord is true liberation? So then Baladev Vijayabhusam Prabhu says, if this is said, the author of the sutras, Vyasadeva, gives the following reply. The liberated soul manifests his original form. Why is that? The sutra explains. Because of the declaration, promise. What is that declaration? The original condition of the soul is described in Chandogya Upanishad. That after that description, the following promise is given. Again, I will explain it to you. The demigod Brahma proceeded to explain that the liberated soul is free from wakefulness, dreaming, and dreamless sleep, the three conditions of material consciousness, and also free from the material body, which is created by the karmic reactions of pleasant and unpleasant deeds. The demigod Brahma described this in order to fulfill the promise he made, which is, because this passage is explained that the soul becomes liberated when he is free from the external material body created by karmic reactions, it should be understood that in the liberated state, the soul is manifested in its original form. Now, is that all confusing?
No, is it?
Okay. So it's not just freedom. Mukti is not just freedom
Yes.
from suffering, but it's positive spiritual realization
Yes.
and getting the qualities of Krishna realized. So we're going to end there and ask if there's any further questions. It's a little difficult topic and it seems dry, but it's really full of juice. Let me get some realization. So I think it's becoming more and more clear to you all,
Yeah, it is.
all of this every week.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, could I ask one more question?
Yeah. Don't
It-
expect much and you won't be disappointed.
It was just from something you said right at the very beginning about not being able to understand these topics without the help of pure devotees. I just wanted to clarify that I'd understood. That the reason is because, you know, the pure devotees on that pure transcendental platform, and they're completely without fault. but the mundane language has fault inherent in it. So therefore, when they're trying to explain in this language, it's never going to completely make sense. So we need them to give us the mercy to put realization in our heart, to transmit the knowledge directly to the heart. And so we realize it in the heart, and that's the only way we can.
Realization and also explanation. Like when I first read Jiva Goswami's verse about the parked cars, I thought, oh my God, I can't figure this out. I don't know what to do. It sounds so different. And then we heard Gurudev's lecture that he gave in 2002 in Hindi. And what's his name? Kishori Mohan Prabhu suggested we translate it. And that was the exact proper explanation of the verse. So he made it so clear that there's no difference.
Okay.
And then we see here that Baladev Vijayabhusam Prabhu is also saying there's no difference. And so the knowledge couldn't come, maybe I'm trying to figure it out. The knowledge couldn't have come from the mind, because how can you combine two things that have no parts? The mind is a sole separate thing, and the jiva is one whole thing, so they can't combine. The soul is not matter, so we can't get knowledge from this dead matter.
Oh, right. I think I kind of understand. Thank you.
We just pray and sing the bhajans and all that.
Yeah. Thank you very
Srila
much.
Prabhupada said in 1970 about his books that he said, my books are like gingerbread men. You know the gingerbread man?
Yeah.
Yes.
He said, anywhere you bite it, it's sweet. But if you can't understand it, read it again. And if you can't understand it again, then read it again. And gradually, by the process of bhakti, and by hearing, and mercy, when those two merge, we can understand a little bit better, and gradually more and more. Until realization descends, then we understand by experience. Like I have experience right now that I have a mosquito bite, and I'm scratching it because it's really itching. So that's experience, that's realization. So when that descends, then we can understand. Like Prabhupada said, when before he came to America, he read that in America it snows. So he would tell his friends about it, but he had no realization. Then when he came to New York and, 1 foot of snow, he had realization. So we're going to end here, and thank you very much. And Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol, Srila Gurudev Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai, Srila Jiva Goswami Ki Jai, Srila Baladev Vijayabhusam Prabhu Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi, Brahmaji Ki Jai, Panchakalpachuribhyastra Kripasinubhyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.